falling back into you. I thought we'd be smarter. I got nothing left to lose. You said you fall with me, no matter how far it goes. Down deep and under, we're stuck in this pattern, but I need you close. All I ever wanted was for you to prove me wrong. You're changing our colors again and again. I could never let you go. Something about you feels so different, makes me wanna risk it. Every time I look at you, you pull me back into your river. Swim a little deeper, I don't need to breathe with my head underwater. I don't know the reasons, I'm not sure I really care. We're all of our demons, and they never disappear. I will forgive you if you've forgiven me. We're stuck in this pattern, but I need you close. All I ever wanted was for you to prove me wrong. You're changing our colors.
Hello everyone, welcome to CodeLabs 2018 Summer. We are going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to introduce Fedor Poretsky, who is a former Code Day alumni and volunteer who's going to talk to you about getting a CS internship if you are not a traditional CS candidate. So we'll go ahead and get started right now.
Hey everyone, I'm not an alumni, by the way. I still go to these things and I still have a lot of fun, so by no means am I any different from you all. But I guess I want to talk a little bit more about how I go about finding internships, finding plans for the summer, and how to just approach these sort of things, these very like open-ended ventures towards finding a job during the summer. Anyway, you see my slides, right? Everybody's seeing my slides. Yeah. Cool. So I guess I'm here to talk about the strategy that can get anyone almost any job they want. It might be a long process. It might be something that's really unclear in terms of like what you need to do. But if you hustle, and we'll talk about what that hustle looks like, you can really get anything you want. So I'll talk a little bit about myself. Tyler mentioned that I'm a SRND alumni. I go around Code Day events every time they come around, and I'm Code Day evangelist. I help out at events, sometimes MC, sometimes just volunteer, and that's kind of how I got my love for CS. It's just by going about these sort of volunteer opportunities, working on my own projects, doing as much CS in my free time as I can. And I also did that coupled with a couple of different AP computer science, regular computer science classes in high school. So when I got to University of Washington, or I guess I applied to a lot of different universities, I decided to go to the local university in Seattle, which is University of Washington. I spent the first year doing a lot of different classes and trying to find where my interests lied in. And so I showed up like any other kind of students trying to do CS, and I did the math, the science, the physics, the bio, the really uninteresting classes like that, as much as I had to, I guess. And being grouped with that huge cohort of students trying to do CS was really difficult. There's a lot of kids trying to get good grades and trying to get into this competitive program, and I hated it. I really didn't like it at all. So the first summer kind of was a lot of me reflecting on what I should spend the rest of my time doing, and this process kind of this ambition of trying to spend my summer productively crossed my path, and I needed to think a lot about how to look at all of these different things that I could do and how to pursue these things like jobs and volunteer opportunities and projects. And so this most important question kind of crossed my mind a couple of times over that summer, and it was, am I who I think I should be or who I want to be? And these two parts of the question kind of how I was thinking previously, and how I was thinking, how I thought I should be thinking, or how all these books that I read and blog posts that I read said that people should be thinking about career options and what they should do with their life. So really who I think I should be is what society really makes you think, what these processes that you're grouped into, these groups of students that you're part of, what they pursue in general. That's what internships at big companies like Amazon, Microsoft, Google look like. You're part of this big cohort of students that are at this big company, all doing their own little thing, but they're part of this big process of recruiting and things like that. That's what I thought I think I should be. And then when I read these posts and I did a lot of more open-ended thinking, I kind of came across this other part of the question, which was who I want to be. Do I want to be part of this big group of students that are working on all of these projects in these large departments, or do I want to work on this small project that where I know exactly the impact that I'm making. It's kind of working at a startup versus working at a big company. At a startup, you know exactly what you're doing and exactly what their product, how the product that they're making is changing the world. At a large company, it's a little bit tougher to answer that question. So kind of through all of that thinking, I decided to go with something a little bit more general towards general towards engineering and science, which was applied physics. Applied physics is really the study of how to approach problems on a very general level, and how to bring together all of these theorems, laws, processes, in solving this very overwhelming problem in physics. And it's really interesting. Kind of this goes hand in hand with the fact that I think physics is the foundation to every science in the world. And knowing how that foundation works really teaches you how to think about any sort of other technical major science or whatever. Teaches you how to think about mechanical engineering, computer science, any sort of engineering that's taught at any university. And I guess getting more towards what we're going to be talking about here, the other thing that I learned, which is really fundamental towards finding a job, is that in CS, a lot of these opportunities are given towards you. You go to one career fair in a CS department, and they're handed right into your hands, these like recruitment opportunities, internships, and you don't really have to do a lot of your own work to find them, to find the right company. They all approach you. And for most other majors, if you want to do something in computer science or computer science related, you have to go about finding these opportunities on their own, whether it's emailing, calling, doing whatever these things, doing whatever necessary to find these introductions to these companies. And I guess I'm going to reveal these slides a little bit better, this whole process over that summer, all of this thinking, brought before me a 3-step process, or I guess that process that I made with all of this thinking turned into 3 steps, which was set a pathway and a goal, make a case for yourself, for you taking that pathway, or you having that goal, and then hustle, which is, go out and just try to find as many interesting people that are part of that path, and explain your process and tell them what your goals are, and try to see how these pathways of other people cross with yours in terms of what those jobs that you're looking for might be, or these opportunities just in general. And that's what we're going to be focusing on, what that hustle looks like. So more specifically, I guess, this presentation's called Cold Everything for a couple of reasons. There's a lot of different ways to go about introducing yourself and finding these opportunities, and they're called cold. Cold email, cold phone call, cold meetings, and it's cold introductions in general are basically just going about introducing yourself and approaching people without any proper introduction, or you don't have to have a mutual friend or a mutual interest in general. You see them, you find them online, you send them an email right away saying, hey, I'm Fedor, hey, I'm Matt, or whatever, and by definition, I just want to read what the online definition says because it might be a little bit more clear, but it's an unsolicited email that is sent to a receiver without prior contact or request for information previously. You're going there without an introduction, without a reason, overall. So some examples, I mentioned this a little bit before, but finding a person online and emailing them might be one way to go about cold emailing or cold introductions. Seeing somebody at an event, whether it's a meetup, a conference, a workshop, or whatever. They might not even look interesting. They might just be some person standing in the corner that's, maybe not looking at their phone, but they have business cards or stickers in their hand, and maybe you want to talk about what those stickers are, what that company is. You don't know whether that company might be relevant, but chances are it might be, it might not be. It's better to embrace these opportunities. Or you just find a company you like online, and it's probably going to be the most relevant for a lot of you. You see somebody online that's working on something cool, and they're working at a company. They might be the founder, they might be the founder or the CEO, they might be the CTO, they might be an advisor, an investor. All of these people are relevant towards finding that opportunity for the internship or whatever you're looking for. So what's the purpose, really? I want to talk about how Code Day and people that attend these events and hackathons in general, how this might be relevant. People at Code Day, more often than not, you'll see a lot of industry professionals come to these events and talk about what their work is and what they do day to day and how what their company is doing. Speak of sometimes there's interesting people from startups, at least in Seattle. The Seattle Code Day is quite literally at a startup that Tyler, the executive director, he knows the founder of the startup that Code Day Seattle is hosted at, right? I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. Kind of. I don't know, but I guess kind of correct. But it's really easy to find these opportunities at Code Day specifically. So, the first step of cold introductions might be, it's next Code Day is a little bit farther out, but when Code Day approaches, finding those interesting professionals and just approaching them and talking to them about what they do. And they're going to be very interested to talk about themselves because that's what those people are there for. So let's talk about what I've done before, or just this summer in terms of cold emailing. Here's a couple of cold emails that I sent.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Really quickly. Why is this? Yeah. There we go. Okay, so I got an actual microphone now. A question sort of related to a question from the chat. You were talking about going to events like Code Day. Let's say that either there's not a Code Day in your area, or Code Day obviously right now is like 6 months out. What other events, have there been other events where meeting people is helpful, like other things like that?
You really don't have to have a meeting. I mean, you look at the general demographic of what Code Day looks like, and it's a lot of people, by the rules that SRND has. Code Day is students under 23, right? Or something along those lines. You're young. You're all young.
It's 25, yeah.
25, but it's still mostly students that are either in college in their first couple of years of college or even high school. And when you go out and email all these companies and say you're high school students, without going to conferences, without going to meetups, they're more often than not going to be impressed. I get offended. I'll get a little bit into that too. But a lot of people, the first thing that they say or they reply when they see one of my cold emails is, "Oh wow, it's so cool that you're like a high school student. You're already like thinking of it that way, or you're a sophomore in college and you're cold emailing." You don't really see a lot of young people, young professionals doing that sort of thing. So that's already putting yourself ahead of a lot of the other people out there that are looking for internships that are your age. So you really don't have to have opportunities in your area. You don't have to have a Code Day. That's just one of the other ways you can go about cold introductions, go about cold meetings in general. You can always find somebody on. I'm going to go over websites and things like that, but you can always just go online and type up an email, call somebody, set up a call. But I'll go over a lot
Yeah,
of these
all this, I
strategies.
guess, is just sort of like different opportunities, right? It's not like you need to be, near a code day. It's not like you need to be, it's different opportunities. It helps you out, but, all of these things are different things you could do.
95, I mean, I'm in Seattle where we have like a lot. I mean, I'm lucky enough to live in Seattle and we have all these opportunities almost every day where you can go out and like meet somebody really interesting. But 95% of this cold email stuff happened through email, which you don't have to be even in Seattle, obviously to do. Anyway, I'll talk a bit more about what these emails look like. Here's one. I introduce myself. I'll literally read what this is, but hello, my name is Fedor Paretsky. I'm currently a student at the University of Washington. I introduce myself. I'm gonna state what I'm emailing for, or what I'm emailing them for, how I'm relevant. I have followed the work related to the revamping of the Seattle Public Library website and appreciated what was done to modernize its look and the way people interact with your resources. However, I noticed that there wasn't any development done redesigning the Seattle Public Library mobile applications. I'm currently searching for an internship this summer and was wondering if I could meet with someone to learn about your organization and discuss this internship possibility. I've attached my resume, and you can view more information about my expertise on my website. Thank you for your time and consideration in advance. So basically what I did, I introduced myself, said what I was doing at that point in time. I was a student at UW. I kind of, talked about what I like about what the company is doing or what the organization doing. SPL, Seattle Public Library, made this really cool website really recently, but their mobile app sucks. And I'll talk about it really openly because it looks like it's from 2009. Like it was like when iOS 1 was out, they published their app and they still haven't updated it. So I basically talked crap about their development on their mobile app and said, hey, why not bring somebody like myself to work on this? And like I mentioned before, they were surprised. They were I'll read the response, but I'll say I am responding to your request to my manager. Oh, and I mean I'll mention who I sent this to. A lot of you might be asking what the subject lines, who I send these emails to. I'll talk about all of that in a bit. Hi Fedor, I'm responding to your request to my manager and on the Seattle Public Library Ask Us forum. Thank you for reaching out to explore the possibility of an internship at the Seattle Public Library. I was especially impressed that you attached your resume, Tyler's laughing over there, and identify the type of project that you would like to work on in your internship. As a result, I was able to know whom to contact on your behalf. I discussed your interest with the, and I had to blank out most of these bits of information because they include names that I didn't really ask for permission to include their emails in these slides, but it was somebody, pretty high up. It was the manager of their IT team, just to give you a general impression of the people that are involved in this sort of decision. After reviewing your resume, they have concluded that based on your skill set and interest, they currently don't have a specific project that fit these, interests and will decline your request at present. So it was a negative response, and it kind of it made me pretty bad rather than give me closure that they told me that they were impressed that I was a student at UW at a university and I attached my resume to an email. That's one of the most basic things to do, and that pissed me off. But so I guess here's another email. It's exactly the same thing. I want to say I want to mention this a lot. I want to mention this. A lot of these emails are identical. They're copy and paste. They're quite literally a template email that has all the blank parts of this email are the actual customizations here. The company name, the email of the person I'm sending this to, the products that I'm talking about. But the general format is I introduce myself, I say that I'm interested in whatever products they're working at the company. I say I'm a huge fan of this specific feature of the product to know that, to prove that I did my research on what they're working on. Not that I'm just I'm emailing Twitch and saying, I really like that you guys have a live streaming platform. Well, yeah, that's all that Twitch does, right? Or that's a big part of what Twitch does. The cool thing about Twitch is they might have really good chat features, or, a really cool API. It's really interesting when you enter, when you correlate the kind of the suck up that you do, or the the research that you do in your emails with, your personal experience. I like to work on HTTP REST services and like working on backends, and I might talk a lot about how the APIs and like the resources at that company for developers are really cool and very well developed and things like that. So here was another email, hey Fedora, we don't hire interns right now, but let's stay in touch. The company is growing fast and soon we'll open it up. It's really good to follow up with these people down the line, so it's another good thing to remind yourself to follow up down the road. This is another negative email. Here's a positive email, and like I said, this is exactly the same template as copy and paste. Fedora, thanks for reaching out. Forward me your email. I think I sent this to the CEO, and they forwarded it to the CTO. It's probably the people in charge of hiring. We've got a full-time role open for Android and iOS. So we have one of those roles. If we have one of those roles filled by an intern, that would be totally awesome. I was impressed by your website. A little bit better than saying that you were impressed by a resume. And glad that you took the time to reach to us directly. And it's really not that much effort to reach out to these people directly, but it's certainly cool when they act impressed by it. It's a good thing to see that the people that you email take the time to read your emails, look over your credentials, and that's certainly another one of those things that motivates me to keep on sending out these emails constantly. I send out, and I'll talk about these figures more. I'm getting ahead of myself here, but and they basically mentioned the regular like screening thing. It was a 15-minute phone interview where we basically talked about my expertise, my interests, things like that. One of these copy and paste emails that took me 30 seconds to send got me an interview, which you don't really see a lot in regular professionals interview processes, I'd say, right?
We have a really quick question from the chat too, and maybe you'll talk about this later, but if you don't have as much employment experience, which I think you didn't have when you first started doing this, right? No. What are your recommendations? Like you said, I attached my resume and whatever else, but what do you put on your resume? I mean, your resume, I think technically would have said, I am studying physics at the University of Washington, and I haven't worked at a tech startup before. Like, what is it that you put on your resume to sort of make it stand out? Is it projects? Is it something else? I guess same with your website too.
Yeah, and I'll show you what my resume looks like, what my website looks like at the end. That was part of the presentation. But what I'll speak about more is what you want to, not having development experience, or I guess you might have development experience, but technical experience, professional experience, occupational experiences. It's pretty key how you pitch yourself in these emails. You don't go in these emails and say, I don't have any sort of professional experience. Well, I can't really say everybody does, but before I did, I worked as a dishwasher before, and it was completely unrelated, but you have professional discretion, and you know how to respectfully email and communicate. That's all of the professional experience you really need to do this sort of thing, and even then you don't really have to have had a job beforehand to open up these sort of experiences. I'll speak about my own experience beforehand. I've never had a whiteboarding interview, never before. And I'm a rising junior at UW. I've definitely done development for at least, or I've done CS since sophomore year of high school. So that's been it's been at least 6 years now, and I've never had a whiteboarding interview up until now. I've never had regular opportunity. I've never sent in my resume through a job interview site. I've never dealt with a recruiter. I've never worked at a regular company. I've never looked at working at a regular company. Almost all of these companies that you're looking at here are companies that we'll talk about the people that I email, but they're companies under 50 people at most. And the people that I email usually are the CEOs, the chief executive officers, the chief product officers, the chief technical officers, the people that are making the executive decisions at these companies. So by no means are you going through a regular interview process when you get opportunities for jobs through these emails. So I don't know. I'll answer that question a little bit more specifically a bit later on. So here's another email, another copy and paste email. Sure, I'll be at Cafe Ladro on Friday morning between 9 and 10. You can meet me there. And we talked about this is what's called a meet. It's called a meet over coffee, I think. I don't know if there's a formal Tyler. Yeah, there's no real formal name for this sort of thing, but. Guess the only difference in this email, the intro is exactly identical, but can I buy you coffee and talk with you more about this product and discuss this internship opportunity? You want to be, if it's something local, it's a lot better to show yourself in person and describe yourself in person than it is through a phone call of some sort. And usually if you're emailing people or companies that are local to Seattle, you want to ask them if you can buy them coffee. And it shows them that you have that commitment. And more often than not, they'll just include you in their schedule later on. Here's another email, identical, like I said before. Literally these screenshots overlap. But hey, Fedora, I'm interested in speaking. Do you have availability to meet this week? And I include, I guess, my reply here. I just, briefly, almost immediately reply and say, thanks for the reply. I have time, during 3 of these times. And I want to mention, as soon as you get into like this process of, sending out 40 emails a day, it's better. It turns into like I forgot what the saying is here, but crank and send. It's a template, it's copy and paste. It turns into like muscle memory, literally, like Command C, Command V, switch window, Command Enter, Command C, Command V. It's fun like that. And when you get when it gets really fun, you start emailing people that are kind of crazy. I didn't get a response, but I emailed Russ Yusupov, which was one of the co-founders of Vine. I'll ask in the Twitch chat, I guess. How many of you know about HQ Trivia? HQ Trivia was founded by Russ. Russ works really closely with, I think it's like Scott Rogowski. He's the host of HQ Trivia. It's like a really small company. It's probably under 50 people right now. But you go out and email Russ Yusupov. What's the worst that can happen? It's awesome if they read your email. If they reply to it, even better. More often than not, they might reply to it. But don't be afraid to send these sorts of emails. Right? Keep on asking yourself the question, like, what's the worst that can happen? There's really not that much bad stuff. The opportunity. What I really want to say is, the opportunities that you're opening up by emailing as many people as you can, and as many crazy people as you can. And by crazy I mean like I ended up emailing like the CEO of Warby Parker because I wanted to work on their mobile apps. They have these really cool mobile apps, and I really like their customer success. And customer they're just their how they deal with their customers. I really like that. That's what I put in my email. He ended up reading my email, but the question that comes out of that is you're doing yourself a favor by emailing as many people as you can, even if you don't really think you're going to get a response back. The chance, it's like a free lottery ticket. It's really like, you take that opportunity for that free lottery ticket instead of saying, what are the chances I win the lottery? If you grab that lottery ticket, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, and one other thing, just to sort of that answers a lot of the questions that I've heard in the chat. Like one of the key parts of this as well, right, is that for the most part you're emailing like high-level people at small companies because they're a little bit more willing to like take a risk on someone who's not the traditional candidate versus like emailing a recruiter at a company where if you don't fit their traditional profile, they're just not even going to look at you, right?
And it's not even the risk. It's that a lot of these people at startups, they know what cold emailing is like. They do it a lot themselves, not generally for, finding a job opportunity or things like that, but they cold email investors. They know what it's like to be on that other side of the table where you're trying to take something, you're trying to make some sort of make some sort of opportunity out of something as simple as an email. Recruiters don't deal with that. Recruiters purely deal with technical, matchmaking and things like that. They don't know what a cold email is like, and frankly, I don't know that many. I know a couple of recruiters. None of them have spoken to me. I've talked to them briefly about cold emailing, things like that, and they never really speak much of it because they don't really know a lot of it. Only people at startups that are usually small enough to have, to even make much of this process. Those are the people that are usually, they're usually they're usually the people that take time out of their schedules to read these sort of emails and, like Tyler said, take these sort of risks. If you want something to screenshot, I guess I might put these slides in the chat later on. I guess I can. But the general text is, you introduce yourself. Hi, my name is blah, blah, blah. I'm a student of blah, blah, blah. I'm interested in this product and really like, you do your research. I really like this part of the product and this part of the company. Can we speak more about this? The important thing here is, we'll go over the guidelines and whatever, but you want it to be super short. You want to have a clear, concise email that doesn't go rambling on. So really limit yourself to something that you can read in under 90 seconds. And you really need to make sure that it's really clear what you're asking for. If it's an opportunity, if you go back to all these emails, I always say, can I buy you a coffee and talk with you more about this internship opportunity? Can I, talk to you over the phone? Are you able to, view my expertise and qualifications? Can I make use of this internship opportunity? Or, can you consider this? It's always a clear, concise answer at the end of each email. And so that goes hand in hand with the guideline here. Introduce yourself, state what you know about the company, why you're interested, show your research, say that you want an opportunity, offer coffee to meet, show the commitment, say thanks, and quickly mention your portfolio resume so they can look at something a little bit more closely. And I guess I want to say it's basically like dating. Not a lot of people understand this, but you pitch yourself. You want to be clear and concise. It's kind of like Tinder. This might not be appropriate for high schools, but you want to be as clear as you can in a short description. You want to offer coffee, and you want to foster the opportunities that you get, which means, every second that you spend with a potential, person that might bring you onto a company, you want to cherish that time. You want to use it as productively as possible, which means, sending as many of these emails as you can, meeting with as many people as you can, connecting and networking with as many people as you can. We'll go over the rules more briefly about what these emails should look like, but keep it short, be straightforward, avoid explaining yourself, and keep it concise to what you know about the company, and say thanks at the end. Just be respectful. All right, so let's practice. I don't know how to do this since you guys are in the chat, but I'll just pull up a notes thing.
Don't forget to make your.
Oh yeah, I'll make my text bigger. Is that good?
Yep.
Cool. Here, let's do this. That's annoying. Okay, I can't do that. Right. All right. So, somebody already wants to connect with me. Interesting. Tyler and I were just talking about this. Wrong Angel Co. I'm gonna go a little bit over how you find these jobs and things like that. But this great site is called Angel Co. And it's called Angel List. I don't have that many connections, so if you want to find me on Angel Co., I'm always expanding my network on there. It's my first and last name. But, let's say, I don't know, I don't skateboard that much, but let's say I want to work at something along the lines of boosted board. I really like skateboards. Let's say, let's just write, I see those boosted boards all the time on the street.
The company name is just boosted.
company name is just Boosted. But I'm saying, like, you can type in skateboards in the search. You can type in electric bicycles if that's what you're into. I click on the first company. It takes a bit to load, but that's just Tyler's Wi-Fi. I see this site. And the main thing here is, Boosted is a bit large at this stage. You can see that there are 51 to 200 companies. There is always going to be some sort of, if we rad power bikes, I mentioned electric bikes. This is I think they're a company even in Seattle. Doesn't say how many employees they have, but the point is, I'm pretty sure they're small and they're a startup. They're under 100 people at most. Point is, on any page on AngelList, the first thing that you're going to see is the founders. The founders, the CEO, the technical CEO. Same thing here. We see Matthew Tran. Cool thing is, Tyler, I don't know if you want to connect with Tyler, but Tyler was in the same YC batch as Boosted Board, so he knows these founders personally. And that's another kind of resource, I guess, that you have. The Student R&D network is pretty impressive in terms of the people that everybody knows in these startup communities. I can introduce you to some people in Seattle. Tyler can introduce you to plenty of people in Silicon Bay area. Only if they, the professional, I guess, only if you're relevant towards that company and there's a reason for you to be introduced. But all right. So I find this company, Boosted. What time is it, by the way? 35 minutes.
It's my door.
All right. Matthew Tran. All right. Matthew looks like a very interesting person. And he is the founder of Boosted Board. Boosted Board is a small company. I go on LinkedIn. I look up Matthew Tran. Right? I think it's Matthew Tran, right? Matthew Tran. And LinkedIn is going to be annoying and not let me see anything. There you go. Boosted. All right. So I see Matthew Tran. Now, I don't really, I guess, I didn't know he's working on a new company, but
All
okay.
the original founders left.
All of the original founders. Okay, well, this is news to my ears. And I'm honestly not that surprised, but that's irrelevant to what we're doing right now. I'm getting sidetracked a little bit. But, let's type up a really quick email, and I'm gonna type this like I would myself. Hi, Matthew. My name is. I'm actually gonna type this like Tyler, like it would be from Tyler if Tyler's okay with that. Hi, Matthew. My name is Tyler Menezes. I'm a student at Garfield, or I don't know. Where do you go to? You went to Bishop.
No, I went to Redmond High School.
Redmond.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm a student at Redmond High School. Boosted wasn't around back when Tyler was in Redmond High School. I'm a student at Redmond High School currently studying projects in computer science or something, or studying a computer science class. The point is I'm typing up what I'm doing right now at Redmond High School. Computer science class, and Tyler might be president of the ACM, the Redmond HSACM. I don't know if you guys have an Association of Computing Machinery Club. Basically, it's just like a club at a computer science club at a high school. But the point is, I introduce what I'm doing, what I'm doing in high school that's relevant, and hopefully you have something that's relevant to computer science in all of these emails. All right. So I introduced myself. I came across Boosted. Boosted Co, I think. It's so funny that he's working on skip scooters. I'm honestly not surprised. Boosted Inc. And really like your budgets, electronic, or are they called electronic skateboards? Electric skateboards, right? Electric skateboards. But Boosted provides lots of different price options for their skateboards. We can go briefly on their website, and this is exactly how I would go about it. Look at the things they like. A lot of other companies that make electric skateboards out there are really expensive. Boosted is one of the cheapest ones. They also have really what else? let's dive a little bit into it. We have some time.
Zoom in, don't forget.
Yeah, let's look at this a little bit deeper. Accessories are a little bit irrelevant here. Maybe let's look at one of these skateboards. Let's look at the boosted stealth. That sounds interesting. The pinnacle of performance. I really like your budget electric skateboards and high performance specs. I'm currently looking for an internship this summer, and would like to discuss this opportunity further with you. You can view my portfolio on my website, or if you don't have that, you can just say you can view my resume, or I've attached my resume. I've attached my resume for you to view. Thanks, Fedor. Or no, Tyler. Tyler Menezes. You want to, email signatures I think are pretty important just because they're very, actually we'll talk about this a little bit more too. Yeah, I'll leave that later on. Are there any questions about what the email is?
Yeah, I got one. So some people are just, I don't know if people were asking this exactly. This is just kind of a general thing people have come up with. Like we were talking earlier about like, what if you don't have, as much experience? You were talking in your email, I think, if you go back to the email, you start off with like, oh yeah, I was like the president of the ACM club or whatever. But, let's say that you don't have that. What would be like a good opportunity? Like, could you talk about maybe a project that you've worked on in the past or like some other things? Yeah.
That's a great that's a great suggestion. Any sort of, the more, and that's why you want to look at companies that are kind of relevant to your experience, like, and even maybe like maybe you built a skateboard of some sort, or maybe maybe it's not even electric, but any sort of fascination with skateboards is what these startups usually like. If I went to a blockchain startup, I like how blockchain kind of made its way into this workshop somehow, but if you look at any sort of company, maybe it's blockchain. If you really like blockchain and you have a couple of really good ideas for blockchain and you did a lot of research for them, you formed a club, or you're even part of a club. I'm part of the UW Blockchain Society, and I'm not an officer or anything. I'm just a member, but I go to meetings regularly. So you can just say like, I'm a hi, my name is Fedor. I'm a student at blah, blah, blah. It might be a high school, it might be a university. I'm also a member at the UW Blockchain Society, or whatever, club it might be. That already, I also regularly participates. It's really a lot of just, what's the best way to phrase your experience here? What's the best way of pitching yourself? That's really what's most relevant here. If you don't have a lot of experience, find one project that you're passionate about. Find one, connect with people that can introduce you in that sort of context. You don't really have to talk about your own experience as much in one of these cold emails. But that's another suggestion that I'm going to bring up at the end of these slides, is what you should be doing right now if you don't feel comfortable writing these cold emails. So I guess when they reply, there's a couple of scenarios here. When they reply to one of these cold emails, they might say you're too young to hire. They might say they aren't hiring interns. In both of those cases, it's usually it's great. By all means, it's the best thing when they reply, because it means that they value, they're willing to spend the time to read your email, to get to know what your resume is. Because, a lot of these companies do say you're too young to hire. They don't know that you're too young. They have to go onto your resume or whatever and see that you're still in high school, Same thing with like aren't hiring interns. Usually what this means is they don't have the time or resources to give you an opportunity here. They might be really busy, which means that they clearly value your time and they want to consider you for this opportunity, but it's just not a match. if they ask you what you want to work on, it means that, it's not a problem with the email that you sent before. It just means that they're seeking clarification. They might want to see how you're relevant. In that case, something like something like a project or past experience, all of those things are very good to mention. Yeah.
Fedor, you actually got an. Hang on. Can't figure out where the control system is. So you actually got an internship or not an internship. You got you talked with the CEO, I think, right, of a startup, just because he asked you what you wanted to work on and you came up with a reasonable idea and he was like, let's talk for coffee or something like that, I think, right?
Yeah, 5 of those. I mean, most opportunities are going to be like that, but I'll count exactly 4 I sent. And I'll talk about my figures. I love how all these things. I'll mention a lot of these things in the slide deck. But a lot of these emails are, you show up at their office or over coffee and they just ask you, why do you reach out to me? What are you working on right now? How are you relevant? What do you want to work on? And you pitch yourself, a lot of these, you're not responding to a job site, or you're not responding to their career section of their website. A lot of these companies don't have career sections of their website. They're quite literally just a page that says, we're a company like Boosted, or at least in the early stages, Boosted was we're a company that's working on skateboards. Here's where you can buy them. Here's our media where we got mentioned. That's it. They don't say that they're hiring. They don't have a career site or things like that. They don't have what are those called, lever.co or whatever. They don't have something like that. You literally email the founders and you make an opportunity of your own. It's like I mentioned at the beginning. I'm going to go back a ton of slides and I don't have time to do that. But you're creating these opportunities on your own.
One more thing I wanted to mention really quickly here too. You were talking about they might say that you're too young to hire, but that's because they went out to your resume. That's one of the most common mistakes that I see people make, is that they'll be like, I know that I'm too young, or I know that I know that I didn't graduate high school, so that might be a problem. Or I know exactly. That's one of the most common things that I see is don't give people a reason to say no. It's you wouldn't, again, talking about it like dating, you wouldn't go on a date with someone and be like, I know that I'm probably not as attractive as you, but I'd really like to see you again, right? It's the same deal. You don't give people a reason to say no. Present your best side and then see if they want to say no, they'll say no.
You're pitching yourself in brief, and I mean, I hate to give an analogy of pitching a startup or to investors, but you want to give your best side. You don't want to give any reasons for why somebody shouldn't give you money or shouldn't give you an opportunity. It's all just ask yourself the question: what is worth mentioning in these emails? What is part of this guideline that I mentioned that I went over? What fits into this guideline and what doesn't? Clearly, there isn't anything. You shouldn't introduce yourself by saying, I dropped out of high school. I have no opportunities right now. I'm looking for paid opportunities. That shouldn't be how you present yourself. That's not how any of these example emails went. I am a student at UW, and but I sent emails like this when I was at Garfield. They went a little bit differently, because I was older. Where I'm older now, and I'm a lot less emails. Get replies of I'm too young or you're too young or things like that. But I will say that when I was in high school, there were a couple of opportunities out there that were good replies, actual opportunities where they were interested and they could hire me as a minor. So by all means, email these people. So if they don't reply, you can always follow up respectfully. Don't send 50 emails over and over again. The great thing is read receipts and things like that, and I'll go over that as well. But find somebody else at the company. Another thing is with these past or with the example emails that I showed you, a lot of them were, let me introduce you to the CPO or let me introduce you to the CTO. It's a chief executive officer introducing you to somebody more relevant to the hiring process, because usually the way it works at these small companies, there's one person that's responsible for the hiring process. There's one person responsible for financials and raising money and things like that. So they're interested, but they'll just forward you on. Sometimes they'll fail at that, and you just want to reach out to somebody else. And some, I think it's totally okay to reach out to all three people at once. Not in the same email, but you can send 3 separate emails to the CPO, the CTO, the CEO. Otherwise, you can always try a different platform. I've definitely tweeted and DM'd people on Twitter. I've sent LinkedIn messages. I've sent Facebook messages to random strangers on Facebook as well. And probably the most promising second try that you can have is find somebody that's relevant. Find a mutual connection. If you're trying to get a startup at a company that you don't have any friends working at, you might find somebody that it's really promising to even think about. You might have a friend of a friend that has some sort of interest at that company. You know somebody at that company, and having a person that's different that introduces you to somebody at that company is a lot better as a follow-up to you. But
Yeah, we have a really quick question, and I think I know at least what my answer would be, but I'm interested to hear yours. Like, when would you mention that you're looking for a paid internship? The person specifically asked, should you say that in the cold email? I definitely would say no in the cold email.
Yes, agreed. You always want to be. Here's the reason. It's kind of like a waterfall effect. You want to keep these emails as general to the opportunity as you can, because the more quickly you mention what this opportunity should look like, whether it's paid, whether it's an internship, whether it's full-time, whether you want to be working on one product, the more reasons somebody has to say no. It's all alluding to what Tyler just mentioned about the whole dating thing. Don't give the person on the other side of that email reasons to say no. Don't say it should be a paid internship. That's that question is definitely going to come down the line. And the way those emails worked, I guess I'll go back briefly, but a lot of these replies, these cold emails or these cold meetings that I had later on over coffee and things like that, that question didn't even come up there. Usually that was kind of the second stage of whether I should be at that company or not. And usually at the conversation that I had with at the follow-up of conversation I had with that in-person meeting, that question would get mentioned pretty quickly. What are you looking for? What sort of products do you want to work on? How's your expertise relevant here? How are your interests relevant? You might, you shouldn't be worried about whether you have expertise at that stage. Really, just talk about your interests. Don't say you want to work on hardware if that's what the company is hiring currently for. If you don't have any interest in hardware, always talk passionately about what you're interested in, not kind of in a mediocre way and passively about things that are completely irrelevant to you but might be more relevant for the company. Is that a good way to phrase it?
Yeah. The other thing I would say too, just specifically on the paid internship note, is I feel like most tech internships are paid, and there's sort of an assumption that it would be paid anyway. And if someone is not, there's sort of an implied assumption with tech internships that they're going to be paid. And if someone is not going to pay you, it's kind of on them to be upfront about that. I feel like to some extent, it might not be the best payment, but when you're paying a full-time developer $100,000 to $200,000 starting salary, paying an intern even $50K a year is not very much.
Yeah. And I do want to say that if they don't, I don't really like unpaid internships personally, and some people might think differently. It really, unpaid internships, I feel, go hand in hand with the company's priority. If they pay interns, that means that they are prioritizing their product development, which means that it's going to be the products that you're working on and the kind of the environment of the company means it's just going to be much more interesting. You're not going to be working on some pet project for free. You're going to be fully integrated with their or most likely fully integrated with their engineering team or whatever at this small startup. A lot of the opportunities that I got through these cold emails were, the product that you're working on, we're going to push public in 3 months, and it was quite literally throwing you on the deep end. But more often than not, the unpaid internships were we have this really cool idea that we want to try out. and we're not sure how, like, whether we're going to grow the product, but we really want to see what it might be like. That's how most people pitch the unpaid internships, and I don't really like it from the get-go. I think it's kind of stupid to work in a product that might be successful and might not be. But that's also, that's kind of a privileged thing to say, and that's only something you can say when you have a lot of opportunities. So definitely, like, the amount of emails that you send out, the more emails that you send out, the more chances you get of having a lot more paid internship opportunities. But if you don't, if you have that one unpaid internship opportunity that's promising, you just got to think about what's more worth your time and what's not. So research, I touched up a little bit about Angel Co. But how do you find these companies? What questions do you ask? It's really about what your interests are. Again, it might be, you can always look on LinkedIn. You can just do a search for, electric skateboard. Yes. And, you get a bunch of, I don't have LinkedIn Premium, but content. Let's look at content. You look at what people are doing. It's really like a social network thing. LinkedIn is a little bit less useful than Angel Co. I forgot, there might be another website that's Crunchbase, I guess, is another. These websites are quite literally the Google of startups. A lot of recruiters and people that know what cold emailing is like and what seizing these opportunities is like at our age. They know what websites to redirect you, and more often than not, they'll redirect you to a site like AngelList, where you can literally just perform a search. I really like I don't know. Give me an example of something. Video games. Well, video games is a little bit in general, but it's a market. So here's a ton of companies already, and the cool thing about AngelList is that you can. You can look at jobs, and that's cool. But we can go like video games. I think Seattle. I think we can do that. And it will probably say locations. I guess not. But I'm just trying to. I think for jobs specifically, and usually like if you follow up with the jobs part of the site for Angel, you can definitely narrow it down by city. Here's like 3 startups that are hiring right now. More often than not, you see there's a summer intern, no salary, no equity. That doesn't sound interesting to me right now, or at least it's better to look at other startups that are at least hiring for giving equity out. And the one thing that I'll mention quite upfront about, like, a lot of you might have questions about what equity is like. Companies that don't pay you salaries and pay you equities, you want to see if they're successful. You want to see if they've raised any money, because if they've raised money, that equity might be worth something down the line. If they haven't raised any money, that means they're not promising at all. If they're paying the lead hardware engineer $50,000 and 5%, I don't know how much that might be for this stage of a company, but 0.1 to 0.2% for an intern, for a 3-month full-time intern, might seem like a lot. It's just worth doing a little bit more research. Seattle startup, companies like that don't really, that doesn't sound good at all. So look at companies that are hiring, I guess. That's a good place to start, because, if they're hiring, that means that they're more often than not going to express interest in hiring an intern, just because it's their opportunity to pay less. And if it's somebody, with Code Day, you get a lot of practice working on projects on your own, without, you might have mentors and things like that, but you're honestly working in an environment that's really close to what a work environment is. If you're working in a group of people, there's always somebody that's working on the back end, or more often than not, there's somebody that's working on the back end, there's somebody that's working on the app side of things, there's somebody that's working on the hardware. That's what it is at one of these early stage companies. If you pitch yourself as an intern, don't be afraid to say that. Don't be afraid that this company is a 50-person engineering team with like crazy engineers that are used to work at Microsoft with like 250-person teams. It's not like that. It's really close to what it's like at one of these Code Days. Just speaking from my own experience, I guess. But that's what finding companies is like. Finding emails, the first part to sending an email. There's this really cool thing I want to show you guys. It's called Rocket Reach. So let's say we find Matthew Tran. Let's go with somebody a little bit more impressive. Let's find Sam Altman. I don't know if he's gonna be on. Maybe he's not gonna publicly list himself. It's content.
You could try someone like the founder. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Founder Dropbox maybe, or
There you go.
yeah.
So we find somebody's LinkedIn. How do we find? They look interesting. It might be some CEO. There's a couple of rules here with emails, but the first one is if you have this tool, it's called Rocket Reach. You get 5 free emails on you get 5 free quotes for an email on a free plan, so you don't pay anything. Oh, well, I have to do phone verification. I would have shown you how cool this thing is, but it's freemium and I have to pay for it. But all you do is you register for a free account, and I don't want to confirm my account right now. But you register for an email, you register for an account, you do the confirmation process or whatever. You don't have to pay a cent. You don't have to give them your credit card or anything. You go to the page, you click add, and it shows you all 4 or all 5 of their emails. I guess I can really briefly show you. I guess I don't really mind showing you my email. But you go here, and I'll show you what my contacts are. I looked up Satya Nadella. I can go, to Satya Nadella's. He's the CEO of Microsoft, clearly. And I can click on Rocket Reach, and here are all of Satya Nadella's emails. And kind of the point is here, you can look up anybody. Bill Gates. Anybody, really. Warby Parker, the CEO of Warby Parker, the co-founder of Warby Parker. Anybody, really. Just like, remember what I said. What's the worst that can happen with one of these emails? They're not going to read it. They might open it, but that's already a good thing that they open it. So that's what I really want to leave you guys with when it comes to finding one of these emails. Really email everybody. That's rule number 1 is don't be afraid to email but don't be afraid to email people you don't know or people that are way out of touch. And that's kind of that's way too low resolution for anybody to see. But, I look up Satya Nadella. This is the first time I looked up Satya Nadella. I go into the extension in the top right. It loads up. I click add, and it retrieves all of Satya Nadella's email in 5 seconds. So the other rule is, before I go into these other tools that are really helpful for this, but the other tool is if you don't want to use Rocket Reach or you run out of free emails or whatever, always email the first person or the first name at the company domain. So if it's Dropbox, it's probably Drew at Dropbox. It's Fedor Tyler at srnd.org. That's literally your email, right?
It's not my actual email, but it'll go to me. I have that one configured.
So you see, exactly. I mean, that's the rule. You can just guess. And that's the great thing about most of these emails is that most of them follow this rule. At small companies specifically, if you go to like Amazon or something, it's always like some crazy, concatenation of initials or like first names and last name initials and things like that. At a startup under 50 people, you'll have only one Tyler at this company, so it's always going to be Tyler at some company domain. So here are some other tools. I'll go briefly into what Notion is. It's kind of like Trello, if you guys are familiar, but you have, it's like a CRM for cold emails in a way.
Can you try zooming in and see if that works?
Yeah, I think I can.
Cool.
But, you go into these are some of the emails that I sent. But you basically have a need to contact, contacted, follow-up, lead, dead, inactive columns, and those all symbolize like stages that you're at with emails. It's good to keep that sort of thing running because it reminds you to follow up with people that are interesting. Anyway, so Notion, read receipts. Read receipts are this great thing this great tool that notifies you when somebody's read your message. It's basically, I have Airmail on my laptop. It's an email client. It has this tool built in. and it basically says Fedora, the person that you sent the email to read your message at this exact point. If you want to follow up with them later on, they keep on reading your emails, like, where were you at, Drew? Why were you in Arizona? Why were you not responding to my emails, man? It's things like that, It gives you a reason to follow up. If they just clearly don't read your emails, they're probably not going to read a follow-up. It's not worth your time following up. So that's a great tool. It's more often than not free. Email signatures. I mentioned this earlier with a lot of these emails, but all of these emails, it's really helpful to have some sort of email signature in the end, instead of saying, here's my GitHub, here's my LinkedIn, here's my Twitter, here's my portfolio, all in one sentence. That's all clustered, and you want to keep these emails really short and brief. If you put them in an organized signature at the end of each email that you send, people have access to everything that they need to know. It's really easy to see. It's really easy to look at everything that's relevant. And it's really been interesting, honestly. Like I almost never, those emails before that I sent or that I showed you all said, here's my email, here's my portfolio, here's my resume. I stopped doing that. I said, I started saying that all of the information is at the bottom of this email. And people pull up, like when I go into these interviews, they pull up my website. I'm like, where did you find that website? They're like, oh, I found it on your email. I was like, oh, I forgot that people look at your email signatures a lot more often than you think. So it's really helpful when you have something like that. Any questions?
Yeah, really quick question. You mentioned follow-ups a few times throughout this. Like, when should you follow up with someone? How many times should you follow up with them? Like, can you just explain really briefly for anyone who doesn't know, like, what is a follow-up email?
Right. They read your email and they don't respond. That's one of the things that happens. And I can, let's say Matthew doesn't respond. I can say something along the lines, Matthew read my email, and it's important to give them a couple of days to follow up or I guess reply to your initial email. But let's say Matthew hasn't responded. I can say, hey, hi Matthew, exactly the same way to address these people. Quickly following up. Were you able to, let me think of a good brief way of saying this. So it should be, it follows the guidelines. You want to keep it brief. And you don't want to follow up too many times, but every follow-up email looks something along the lines of this. Quickly following up, were you able to discuss this internship opportunity with some of your colleagues? I'm super excited about the possibility of working at Boosted Inc. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks, Fedora. Or thanks, Tyler. Tyler, you gotta keep it consistent. But the point is, it's brief. It's I'm excited. So you gotta reiterate your excitement, reiterate the fact that you want closure on this, whether they want to move forward with hiring you, whether they don't. And again, give them something to do at the end of one of these emails. Right here, it was I would like to discuss this opportunity with you. Right here was let me know if you have any questions, in addition to just saying I'm super excited, which means you got to talk to me at some point in time, or tell me that this isn't possible. That's what a follow-up looks like. So it's really short, it's really brief. You have to say that you're following up, or instead of just randomly sending an email, you have to briefly reiterate what you're reaching out to them for, and you have to give them another thing to do, which is let me know if you have any questions, or let me know if you have any questions, and or would like to discuss.
Yeah, and the reason you're sending these is generally just that busy people sometimes have an email and it arrives in their inbox and they're like, oh, that's cool, and then they forget to reply to it, or they get really busy, right? I mean, that happens to me all the time.
Right. Yeah. No, these people get hundreds of emails a day that are like this, and they look at some people might look at a lot of them. Some people might keep a completely empty inbox, and they tend to look at every single email. Some people don't. Some people's inboxes are complete trash, and they lose track of these emails really easily. So it's important to, more often than not, you'll reach them at a point where, or they'll open up an email at the point where your email is at the top of their list, at the top of their inbox, and they'll click on it first, and they'll remember that, oh, I briefly looked at Tyler's email a couple days ago. Might as well respond now really quickly, and they'll say, well, let's set up a phone call, let's meet in person. Here's why this won't work out. It's one of those three things usually. So I think that might answer your question.
Yeah, I think it does too. And I just wanted to reiterate too, like I personally have gotten like tens of thousands of dollars from people who have not responded to my initial email, but responded to a follow-up. So it's definitely something that's like totally okay.
Yeah, totally worth doing. Not too many times though, and give them some time to reply. I was joking a little bit around about they might be on vacation in Arizona and they might just be out of touch in their email. Give them like 2-3 days to respond after they've read your email. And if you follow up, they'll usually respond a lot quicker than those 2-3 days. So what should you do right now? Some people mention, they don't have technical experience. They don't have projects that they're willing to show. So a lot of things you can do. First of all, you can just network. You can go to meetups. Meetup.com is this great site where you basically meet up with other people that are interested in the same thing. You go to events, and I can briefly show what this website looks like, but let's say this is annoying because I can't search, but let's say I want to build a mobile app. That looks interesting. Zoom in, of course. Tech, Puget Sound. Funnily enough, I know the founder, the leader of Puppy now through CPC, but that's relevant. So these guys meet up very often, and if you're into Python, this might be some sort of thing. The problem here is, if you're out somewhere remotely, you might not have as many meetups in your area. So this is definitely something that requires in-person meetings. But it's a great thing because it's instant networking. A lot of people are surprised to see young people at these meetups. It's a lot of professionals. And kind of the foundational part of networking, which is finding other people that are interested in the same thing, is already done for you. They're there because they're interested in the same thing, whether it's building a mobile app, whether it's Python, whatever. RSOs at UW. So this is specific to UW, but club organizations. If you're next to a university, especially a public university, it doesn't even have to be public really, but a lot of the resources at clubs at these universities are immense. The Blockchain Society, for example, we have speakers from international companies come in on a weekly basis, and they say we're hiring. We're willing to fly you out to Birmingham, UK to start immediately. Some of these opportunities might be bad. Some of these opportunities might not give you a follow up or turn out to be anything. But like I said, if you're spending the rule that I have personally is if you're spending your time watching Netflix on the weekend when you can be sending out cold emails because you still don't have a good opportunity, you should be doing that rather than waiting for something to show up in your inbox. Keep on sending out those emails until it's full and you're overwhelmed. It's going to take a while before it gets to that point, but it's free. You have plenty of time to do it. That's the great thing of being in school, is that you can spend your weekend doing whatever you want really, which it might be sending emails all day.
Well, to be fair, even if you're if you don't have that, maybe you work a job or something after school, still, what free time do you have? Is this important to you? And if it is, spend time doing it.
Doesn't require, writing emails doesn't require any sort of resources. And like I said, all these tools that I mentioned before are completely free. The amount of money the currency that went to cold emailing was time. That was purely it. So if that's something you value, think about budgeting in terms of other things that you're doing, budgeting your time. Hackathons, SR&Ds, like I mentioned before, people go to Code Day events for different reasons. CodeLabs, you might be working on the project right now. That's already something that you could be doing for, you're already doing something right now that's beneficial for these cold emails and these cold opportunities. Sometimes the first thing that these people ask you is something along the lines of, what are you doing right now? What do you like? What project are you working on right now? What's your favorite, what's one impressive thing you've done? And a CodeLab project might be something very impressive that you've done. There's certainly a lot of projects in my free time that I found like pretty, they're my favorite. They're something that I find most impressive personally. Eventbrite is basically, like a site where you can Google search events, and it's kind of like Meetup. Great thing. I'm gonna give a really quick pitch for UW Blockchain Expo. You should come out to our cryptocurrency expo this October.
You should zoom in so
I should zoom in so they can see more details. The great thing is, if you're a student, regardless of UW, honestly, we'll give you free admission. We have a lot of great speakers, and it's meant for students, which means opportunities, great workshops that are all blockchain and cryptocurrency related, completely free. Or I think it's like $5 in comparison to like $100 events in the other areas. Anyway, so Eventbrite, like I mentioned, very great way to just Google search for events. In a way, Facebook events is also really good. If you go into the Facebook events tab, I guess I'm not really going to do that because it's pretty similar to Eventbrite, but you'll see an event lists. Facebook is really good at curating events that are relevant to you, relevant to your interests. And it's really, it's good to see when you can see who's going to these events, which is really cool. It's all kind of like meetups again. You see Meetup shows you who is, if you go to Python Puppy, we're going to see a bunch of random people, but you see exactly who the members are, and you see who is planning on attending every single event, which is great. You might see recurring people. So another thing, I mentioned briefly like spending time. What was I doing last summer? I was reading a lot of books. I was writing a lot of essays and trying to kind of, writing essays might sound boring to a lot of you, and it did sound boring to me too, but it's really helpful to put your thoughts out on paper, because a lot of people don't know this, but your thoughts change a lot constantly, and a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't really acknowledge that. And when you write your current thoughts out on on a piece of paper constantly, you can see how your thoughts have changed, how they've developed, and you can follow those themes and figure out what's most relevant to you at that point in time. To me, it was, working at these startups, working at a position where I had a lot of influence over the product that you're working on. And, I came up with this rule that every single opportunity that I should grasp, I should be able to answer in under 30 seconds how that product that I'm working on is benefiting the world. And that's, specifically the theme of companies, like the list of companies that I came up with. And through that process, I became really opinionated. Like I said, I knew exactly the goals that I had, the opportunities that I wanted to achieve and bring before me. And I learned to defend that opinion. When you go out and speak to people and they ask you what you're working on, what you value, and you speak really passionately about your thoughts and how you came up with your thoughts, really, it's really impressive. It really is. I don't really see a lot of people doing it. And it really just shows you that you've done a lot of thinking about what you want to spend doing with your life. And those are if you even spend a month really just constantly thinking every weekend about what these questions are, and what your answers to those questions about what these cold opportunities should look like. What do I value personally? What products do I want to work on? Who are the people I want to work along with? What do I want to be doing in 10 years? If you really think deeply and long term about what those questions, what the answers to those questions are, how your path aligns with those, and you learn to defend it, it's really impressive. Trust me.
It comes across too, right? Like in
Yeah.
conversations, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, almost every day when I introduce myself, I talk about what I'm working on and what's, how, and yeah, what I'm working on always goes hand in hand with how I came up with, what I'm working on, what's most passionate to me. So, work on projects and portfolios. A lot of you are already doing that with CodeLabs, but do it on your weekends, or spend time doing that on your weekend when you're waiting for replies. If you send out 100 emails, it's good to, pace yourself a little bit. And yeah, work on some sort of project on the weekend. It really can be anything from, what's an example? Like a PDF to PNG conversion service might be one example. It's impressive to have like a fully fledged working service like that. and it shows a broad amount of expertise. You know, you're writing a backend, you're writing a bunch of algorithms, you're writing a load balancing service, you might be writing a website. Find a project that you're willing to follow through on. It's a little bit the opposite of a code day project. Not always, because a lot of the code day projects turn out to be full-time positions sometimes. You'll see sometimes teams go to code day and work on a project that they've been working on for a couple of code days in the past. But the point is here, you should it's definitely more than a 24-hour commitment to work on one of these projects. If you do that, you can reference it in a cold email if it's relevant. Remember, keep it short. Don't spend a lot of time working on it. As in, like, don't, aim for functionality, not for perfection. Because, it's always good to see, it's always good to see beautiful code, I guess. But, don't spend 80% of your time focusing on beautiful code. Figure out what that balance is. Figure out what's best for you to present in these cold emails and how you can demo your work best. Is that
Can you show what yours looks like?
What my portfolio looks like?
Yeah. Another good one to look at might be TJ Horner's when you're done.
Yeah.
So he's got a pretty good one too.
It's pretty good. So this is my portfolio. It's really that was the other thing. Make it bigger, of course. Yeah, I know. I've learned. Don't spend a lot of time working on it. I spent a weekend, or actually no, a little bit more than a weekend doing this, but there's not really a ton of functionality. This is all very static. The only thing that's not static here is at the bottom right here. It shows what I'm playing on Spotify, because I thought that was a cool feature, and I actually copied that from TJ, I think. TJ had that from Last.fm a couple of years ago. But, it shows all my links. People can go to my LinkedIn, Twitter, Keybase, blog. My blog's disabled, I think, but yeah, it is. But it shows my expertise. There's this very scary thing that shows how old I am down to the decimal. That was another TJ thing. A lot of influence here is from TJ. The point here is don't ramble on. I don't know how many words are on this website, on this web page, but I'm willing to go straight to word counter and copy and paste this. And it's only 1,000 words. This entire website is 1,000 words. So, keep it very brief and don't spend a lot of time making this. That's my website, TJ. I think it's tj.horner.
tjhorner.com.
tjhorner.com. I don't know. It's cool to also have a cool URL. I have f3d0.com. TJ has his first and last name. tj.horner I think is more cool than just tjhorner.com. Same thing here, let's look at, it's going to be less than words probably than mine. Yeah, half as many words, but, he goes over every single piece of.
And click on View Portfolio too, because that one's pretty good if you scroll down to the blue section. This is one other thing you can do.
Oh, this is so cool.
Yeah, and it's got a lot of pictures of the things he's worked on too. This is our intern. He actually not exactly tricked me, but we ended up hiring him when he was in middle school because he never really told me he was in middle school. And so it's like, yeah, you can be our intern. You're doing cool stuff.
Right.
And he's currently in high school. So, same kind of deal.
And I can almost promise you that email, that cold email or whatever pathway TJ took to become an intern at SR&D is pretty similar to what you guys are going to be doing. So more or less, I'd say, right? I mean, you didn't know how old he was. People can't really gauge how old Tyler is. I mean, he might, 16 to 18, but with full honesty, you can literally just remove this.
I'm 26, by the way.
He is 26. He's no longer in high school. The executive director of SR&D is not a high school student, for all of you out there that might be thinking that. But that's one thing you can work on is a portfolio, and it's always good to have something, really brief to present. Talk to interesting people. There's also, meetups, networking events, conferences, coffee greets, things like that, where you just email. The more people you talk, the more practice you have defending your opinion, and the more comfortable you are with pitching yourself personally for these opportunities. I will say that it's something that you really need to be comfortable meeting with people. That's like the one overwhelming theme to this whole thing is. If you're uncomfortable talking with people, it's a really great way of practicing that for me personally was typing up these emails and sending them out to as many people as I can. I used to be really scared of sending out emails to Russ Yusupov. I would never do that. If 4 years ago, I would have never even thought about doing that. But again, ask yourself the question, what's the worst that can happen? It's the same thing with meeting with people. The more emails that you send, the more comfortable you are. I think the more comfortable you'll be meeting with people and personally, and like basically going over the same facts you would in a more expensive email. I think that's a pretty, so yeah, and opportunities will almost always arise. If you meet with people, especially at your age, more often, very often, you'll see at least one person give you your business card, and there'll be another person to add to your network. And speaking of network, LinkedIn. Add myself on LinkedIn, add Tyler on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn, I mean, for those of you that don't know, LinkedIn students, LinkedIn for students is a lot of, I don't know, I'm going to go here, maybe Zahir might be a student at Code actually, and he just sent me a connection request. And Zahir, I obviously didn't know that what I'm about to say, but I usually try to keep my connections on LinkedIn to the people that I know, or if I send somebody a connection that I haven't met personally, I send them a note along with a connection. LinkedIn, to sum up, is basically like Facebook for professionals, except you keep it professional. Your network on there is purely professional, and that it has a feed and everything like along those lines. You can see who's looked at your profile. But the cool thing is, if I want to see who's worked at SR&D, I can literally just search SR&D, look at all the connections that I have that work there. And I can look at the company, overall. And LinkedIn Gold or Premium is annoying sometimes, but you don't really need that, really, unless you're, trying to hire somebody as like a recruiter or things like that. That's what LinkedIn Premium is technically made for.
One other thing you can do on LinkedIn, by the way, that I didn't really realize was a thing until somewhat recently is like the post section where you can like post things. You can actually like whenever you make a project, just like post your project there, and then everyone that you've met professionally will see it eventually, and then they'll be like, oh yeah, like this person does cool stuff.
The feed on LinkedIn, I mean, I really want to say the feed on LinkedIn is pretty impressive. Like I don't even know how it organizes, but the great thing is, if you get any sort of press coverage, LinkedIn will detect it and email out all of your connections and say, Fedora or Tyler were mentioned in the news, right? I think that's something that's still done. But that's like one of the cool things. It's a really just great way of presenting yourself. And the sooner you start, like I said, the sooner you start at an age right now, it's really never too early. I mean, sometimes it's too early to start, but right now it's really not too early. The people that have very impressive networks right now, are the people like my age, are the people that started using LinkedIn at a very young age. Reach out to me, like I said, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. The thing that I do ask is you send some sort of message in the connection request, same thing for Tyler, because that helps us gauge what your interests are, what you're trying to do through, networking. It might be looking for a job, it might be, getting more involved with SR&D, it might be, seeking more advice, things like that. And if we see fit, and if you ask, nicely and you give a good reason, we can introduce you probably to the right people. How do you feel about that, Tyler?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's the other great thing about LinkedIn is if people haven't used it before, like it says, oh yeah, like you want to talk to this person. Well, guess what? Like Tyler knows him, Fedora knows him, whatever else. And yeah, I mean, you can ask me and I can be like, oh yeah, I know that person. Or like Fedora asks me this all the time and I'm like, oh yeah, I haven't talked with him in 5 years, but like I'll try to get coffee with him next time I'm in San Francisco and then I can introduce you. Yeah. So that's definitely a thing, and you just got to kind of keep an eye out for it. And I know people who've gotten jobs through, connections that they've made at just some random meetup, and they're like, oh hey, you were a cool person, we talked at this meetup a while ago, like this one person I want to work for, can you just like introduce me if you think I'm a cool person? It's
always like that, actually. So the guiding principles is just going over everything in this presentation, this workshop. In emails, like not in person, basically act older, keep your messages concise. And by act older, I mean pitch yourself not as a student, pitch yourself as a professional, pitch yourself along with the projects that you work on, along with the experience that you have. When I was 18, my experience was, I'm a student I just said I'm a student and I have extensive experience developing backend APIs. Extensive experience might be just 2 years, but it's still extensive experience by my means, right? That's
well by the standards of technology as well, which changes constantly every 2 years.
2 years is 2 years is very 2 years is very long. So I mean, a lot of you maybe have only 2 years of experience. You already have extensive experience by definition. So say that. You have full rights to say that in one of these emails. Act older. Keep your messages concise. That's the other thing. And like I said, follow those guidelines that I mentioned earlier. In meetings, speak quickly. This is something I haven't mentioned. You can cover a lot more ground if you don't speak like this. If you speak like this, you tend to ramble on. If you defend your ambitions really quickly and you speak about your opinions really quickly, that means that you've given them a lot of thought and you've written them out on paper. If you've written them out on essays, you can probably sum them up really quickly in some sort of vocal conversation. And it just means that you're more, I think the quicker you speak in meetings, the more confident you are about what you're saying. When you ramble on and you say, it also is a really great strategy of stopping to say When you speak quickly, you mostly replace your ums with pauses or I think just breaks, honestly. You just don't say as much, or you say so, or something else, really. I'll just say, I'll defend that a lot because previously I used to say a ton. Now I say a lot less, at least. Maybe you've noticed, but instead of that, it's a lot smarter to pause during presentations, workshops, meetings, and just speak more quickly in general. It's a lot less likely that you're going to mumble if you speak a lot quicker in general. Tyler speaks really quickly as well. Our meetings, it's really funny. Our meetings, we speak very quickly in our meetings because I think that's kind of what it's turned into over the years. But it's something very impressive. When you see a young student or whatever speak really quickly about what they're working on, about their experience, it's very impressive. I find it impressive even though I'm 23. I'll see an 18-year-old do the same thing I'm doing right now, and I'm blown away, frankly. So I'll give some of my personal statistics. Maybe this is demotivation, but I like to think that these slides are really realistic. At least 15% of cold emails that you send out are replied to at least once, which means after follow-up, they're also replied to. That is with the assumption that these emails that you're sending out are very effectively written, they're short, they're concise, you have some sort of reason to be at that company. And after that, 40% of those 15% of emails means that you can get something good out of them. And by good, I mean anything from references, networking opportunities, job opportunities, introductions to really fabulous people. I've met really cool people, and I've developed this really interesting personal advisory board of CEOs, CPOs that are all really interested, and I've met all really interested in what I'm doing, and I'm honestly surprised by that too, is the fact that they take time out of their schedule to meet with me. But that's all with the thanks of cold emailing, stuff that I just taught you. That's as much, really everything that I just told you, that's as much as I know. There's not really experience that comes from this process. It's just you grow comfortable with it. In terms of, I would say all of you, if you understand what I just went over in this workshop, you're already in the 99th percentile of writing cold emails if you apply everything that I said. The thing that people get more experienced in is just growing comfortable in sending out these emails and doing it as much as they can. And really, just to sum it all up in one statement, this whole theme of cold emailing, cold introductions, cold meetings it means that I'm going to go back to the very, very, very beginning, and it might take me I hate these animations that I have to go through. I can just hold down. There were 3 steps here. The first 2 are something that you can be doing right now. and they're not related to job opportunities at all. This is something you'd be doing regardless of cold emailing or whatever method you're trying to get a job with. The first two steps are something that I think everybody should be doing. The last step, hustling, is really the only thing that separates all of you from any sort of job opportunity or internship, really. And that's why I always say you're only one step away, hustling being that step from your dream job. Anyway, that's it.
Cool. So we're gonna go to some Q&A.
Sure.
First of all, I wanted to really quickly just mention too, like my sort of biggest takeaway when I was in high school or anything else, and I being the mysterious voice here, but I being also the head of SR&D, like I did a YC-backed startup and a whole bunch of things, and I got like some jobs and some internships when I was in this, professional CS as well. And my biggest takeaway was just like, yeah, there is a process for getting a job at most large companies. And if you're part of that process, you won't get a job because you don't fit into that traditional stereotype. So like find a new process, right? And I think for me, that's what the hustle part is. It's like find a different way to do it because the easy way doesn't work for you.
It never does. Or it does sometimes. The kind of the rule here is if you see a recruiter, this is why Facebook, Microsoft, Google, they really rarely work by this process because they have a recruiting process. They have a job application process. They have people that are specifically tasked with finding interns, finding people that are willing to work at that company. And that's why emailing the CEOs, the people that are really high up, is the first step of finding an opportunity here. You're basically avoiding the obstacle of recruiters, and that's why I personally hate so much dealing with recruiters so much. It's because they're quite literally an obstacle to this process in general. I really envy their work, and I really think that it's really helpful to see them matchmake talented CS students with companies. But for me personally, it's just not as helpful as it is for other students that actually study CS.
Yep, that makes sense. So if anyone else has questions, feel free to post them in the chat right now. I will go through some of the previous ones that have accumulated over time. So
I have about 5 minutes, by the way.
Okay, well, we'll go to one, and then if anyone else has any questions really quickly. So someone asked, would you put things like, volunteer moderation on your portfolio resume? That's a really specific one, but I guess my question would be, the more general version is like, what is your heuristic when deciding whether or not to put something on your resume or your portfolio?
So relevant to, let's say, okay, here's I see a lot of hackathons. I see a lot of paid hackathon positions, like bigger hackathons like Hack MIT that are looking for organizers or things like that, things along those lines. And if you look at one of those opportunities, clearly any sort of volunteer opportunity that's related to CS or working at a nonprofit where you get students engaged in technical stuff and engineering and things like that, that's clearly relevant. So the question here is your volunteer opportunity worth those extra 15 words in that email? Is it really gonna take your email to the next level when you say, if I was applying to, let's say I was applying to Coinbase, it would have been super impressive if I created my own token or did my own ICO, because Coinbase is a blockchain firm and they do cryptocurrency stuff. But if I was working, if my volunteer experience was something along the lines of helping out at something completely else, something completely unrelated from blockchain, it's not really making my case in that email. So it begs the question, what's relevant, what's not?
Right, that makes sense. And I mean, on that note as well, if you don't have anything relevant, do something relevant, right? If you don't have anything relevant,
or you shouldn't be reaching out for that company.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you really, really want to, then you should be doing something along the lines of a project.
Yeah, exactly. Do something on the weekend, make your own cryptocurrency on the weekend, and then just say, I made my own cryptocurrency.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
There's plenty of tools for that.
Yeah. Cool. So I guess you got to get going. If people do want to connect with you online, your name is on the slides. We got it. It's all over on the video. Don't even worry about it. So, feel free to do that. Same thing with me.
Tyler's email already from that rule.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, feel free to do that. Don't forget, CodeLabs is continuing next week. So we're going to post the schedule for next week's workshops and things on Saturday. And then also we will probably set up like some coaching sessions if you have questions about like your, if you want advice on your resume or things like that. I will definitely do that, and I'll see if I can get some other people to do that as well. So if you're still not sure and you have some specific personal questions about what projects you could be working on or anything else, feel free to do that. And otherwise, we will see you hopefully next week. Don't forget to subscribe on Twitch so you get those announcements. Don't forget to rate and subscribe, as they say. This will all be archived on our YouTube page as well. And so thank you so much, Fedor.
Yeah, thanks, guys.